I'm sure you've seen these crazy good looking videos that were shot on a smartphone and you're thinking like, why the hell do my videos don't look like this? And some part of it obviously is the gear that you're using, but on the other side it's also how you're shooting and if you're using the right settings or not. And today in this video I'll show you the best video settings on the brand new Galaxy S24 Ultra so that you're gonna capture the highest quality videos. So without any further ado, let's get started. So one of the first questions you need to ask yourself when you're capturing videos with your S24 Ultra is, are you going to be using the regular video mode or do you want to go all in and use the pro video mode? And in my opinion, there are pros and cons to either one of these, but now let's talk about them just a little bit. With the regular video mode, you are just going to get very good looking videos faster and easier compared to the pro video mode. That means you also have less flexibility because, for example, you cannot dial in the ISO or the shutter speed. If you compare that to the pro video mode, you can dial in all the different settings that you want. You can also change the contrast and the sharpness and all that kind of stuff, but it just takes more time. So you have to ask yourself the question, like, do you want to invest the time to get like 5% better video quality or not? To be honest, like most of the time whenever I'm shooting, I'm just gonna be using the regular video mode. And even though I am a professional filmmaker and I know all of the settings, so you just have to decide for yourself. And as I said before, if you want to get the absolute best video quality, then I'm very much recommending that you're using a 3-axis gimbal and also an ND filter to get the right motion blur, but that needs a lot more time compared to just using the regular video mode. And by the way, in case you're not subscribed yet to the channel, make sure to do so. We're really close to hitting 100K subscribers. It's helping the channel more than you know, so thank you very much. All right, so let's kick things off with the regular video mode. I'll show you like all the different settings that you have there, what they're doing and so on. So this is the video mode. Like if you are just starting out and you want to get good looking results fast and easy and you don't want to dive into all of the nitty gritty, like this is the mode that I would be recommending for you. So what you can see here, these are all of the different lenses, and with the S24 Ultra you have a 0.06, a 1, a 3 times, a 5x lens, which is actually better than the 10x lens this year, and then you also have the 10x lens. So you can just cycle between all the different lenses, and you can also change the lens whilst you're recording. I wouldn't recommend doing this and when you're shooting like in lower light situations or you want to get the best looking results possible, then I would be recommending to use the 1x lens in just 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second, and also in 8K. This is going to be delivering the absolute best quality. So next to all of the different lenses, you can also turn on something that is called auto framing, and to be honest, I'm not a big fan of this at all. Like it just guesses what I want, and to be honest, I just don't like this. I want to have control over what I'm doing. You can see it's just jumping around, so I don't like this. I would not recommend to use this. At the top you can change the resolution. You can see I'm currently in Ultra HD, so 4K at 60 frames per second. I'm using this because we have just been shooting an epic B-roll sequence. In case you have not seen that video where I'm showing you an entire breakdown, then click this video up there. But I just wanted to have the opportunity to shoot in slow motion as well. That's why I shot in 4K at 60 frames per second. Next to that, you could be changing the aspect ratio. I would just leave it as it is. Next to the different aspect ratio, you can activate the super steady mode, which is kind of like action mode on iPhones, but there you can literally just run through. I don't know, you can be running like crazy and you will still get some very smooth looking shots. It's absolutely magic what it's doing. You are losing a bit quality, but it's still very cool. So in case you're doing some extreme action sports stuff or anything like this, then I would activate this. I've always turned off the flash mode unless I really need it and I have no other light source at all. And then we can also check the other camera settings. Auto frames per second, I've turned that off. Video stabilization, I like to turn that on unless I'm shooting with the third-party lens, one that I have on right here. This is just a filter and not a lens. The tracking autofocus, you can turn that on or not, doesn't really matter, depends on what you're filming. Grid lines, I always turn them on because I want to know what I'm filming. And I think it's getting really bright right now. We might need to adjust the settings. But yeah, basically all of the other settings are just standard, so there's not a lot that you have to change to be able to get some really good looking shots with your S24 Ultra. And by the way, just a very quick thing before we come to the pro video mode. For all of you professionals, did you know that with just your smartphone, you could be making a full-time living? I'm talking about making plus 10K per month as a content creator using just a smartphone. I recently sat down with one of our members of our course. Her name is Lily, and she's making plus 10K per month creating content with just her iPhone. And in this conversation, she reveals all her secrets she uses to land clients consistently. I will link it down below. It will be the first link. It's a free 20-minute 30-minute training where you will learn all her secrets and you can implement all of the strategies for yourself. So first link down below, check it out. All right, so now let's check out the Pro video mode, because if you're watching a video like this, you probably want to get the absolute best quality somehow possible, and you're gonna get that by using the Pro video mode. So you can access that at the bottom here next to video, tap on more. Then you have a bunch of different options, and what we want right now is the Pro video mode. You can find it at the top right. And this is what it looks like, and as you can see, like right now it looks overexposed. And the reason for that is like a half an hour ago we have been filming here as well, and there was no sun at all, and the settings are still safe there, so we need to change that. And I'll show you how that works basically. So at the bottom here you have all of the different settings that you can change, and the first one is ISO, which is basically the sensitivity of the sensor. And yeah, you can just tap on that and then you can bring that down all the way to ISO 50. I have not made some scientific comparisons of ISO 50 versus ISO 200. Generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, always try to keep your ISO as low as possible, because then again, generally speaking, you will have the least amount of grain in the image. But I'll just leave that at 80 or something. Now let's hop over to speed, and that is the shutter speed. And this is very important in case you want to get a correct motion blur. So if you're moving around and you want to get like a cinematic motion blur, you need to have the right shutter speed, and you get that by using a shutter speed that is twice your frame rate. So for example, you're shooting at 60 frames per second like I'm doing right now, and you want to have a shutter speed of 1/120th. For whatever reason, I cannot dial that in exactly. Don't ask me why. I can only use 1/125th of a second, but that is still fine. And as you can see currently, like it's still a bit overexposed, and the reason for that is that my ND filter that I have right here is not strong enough. So if I put that away, you can see it's even way brighter. So if I put that on, it's helping a little bit, but it's not strong enough. So in this case, if I would not have a stronger ND filter, I would just have to dial down the ISO a little bit to get the correct exposure in the end. Next up, we can also change the focus. So we do have the autofocus, but we can also, dial in the focus manually. So if we want to get like a real close focus, we can dial that in. And then we also have a bunch of different autofocus settings. You can play around with them, but most of the time, to be honest, I'm just using the autofocus. And then when I'm shooting, I'm just locking my focus and the exposure. And the way and how this works, by the way, just long press on the screen, and then it says AF and AE locked. Next to that, we have the white balance, and this basically determines like, are the whites in your image actually white, or are they orange or bluish? And white balance is a setting that is constantly changing, especially if you're filming outside. Like in this shot here, for example, we probably have had 3 different white balances already. Yeah, and I'll just show you here real quick. Like if you put that way down, you have like a very blue image, and obviously that looks completely wrong. And then we can also do the exact same thing in the other direction. Like now it looks like we are in Mexico when we're shooting Breaking Bad, so obviously that's not what we want. We can dial that in manually, but we can also automatically let the Samsung like determine what kind of white balance we want, and then we can also go in here and just lock that white balance. This is something that iPhones have been struggling with for like basically forever. They just recently fixed this, that during a shot the white balance has constantly been changing, and this just really sucked. Next to that, you can also change the microphone. The S24 Ultra has like, I don't know, 4 different microphones, and you can change that from omni to front to rear. And then you can obviously also attach a USB microphone, so you can just switch between those. And you could also be using a Bluetooth microphone, and you can just select that here. And then you have the different zooms, but to be honest, I would not use that at all. So I just wouldn't use that. At the top here, you have a bit of a histogram, so you can also use that to determine like, is your image correctly exposed or not? Like this is also helping. You also have audio meters. You cannot really tweak them. You cannot really change anything there. And that is basically all the settings that you can change here in the Pro video mode. And then we have 2 more settings that you can change, and let's just talk about them real quick. In the Pro video mode and also in the slow motion mode with the S24 Ultra, you can also switch over to 4K at up to 120 frames per second. And like no iPhone can do that, and also there are very few Android phones that are capable of shooting in 120 in 4K. And that's something that is really cool. And like I would not use that for any type of scenario. Like for example, here we're in a park, and we're basically almost, it seems like we're the only people here. So it does not make a lot of sense to shoot in 120 if there's not a lot happening. But if you're filming some action sports or some crazy stuff is happening, then obviously the 120 does make a lot of sense. And I feel like the quality is also really good. It's not at the same level compared to 24 frames per second, also compared to 60, but it is really cool, and I would definitely recommend that you use that. And then there's one more feature which I personally really like, and that is the portrait video mode. And you can access that by going to more and then just going over to portrait video. And this is basically kind of like portrait photo mode. It basically just blurs out all the background, and you can also change the amount of blur that you want. You can, just a bunch of different settings like big circle, not quite sure what that does. Color point for some crazy effects like this, and you could also add some glitch. I would just turn on the blur. I like to blur it out all the way, like that's my style. Yeah, you can get some really nice results, especially for spoken words like interviews or Instagram Reels. I always like to use the portrait video mode. So in conclusion, if you want to get the absolute best video quality with your S24 Ultra, then I would recommend to be using the Pro video mode, and you can also play around with the HDR10+. I'm not the biggest fan of that, to be honest, because you're just limited on where you can actually watch your videos. So I'm most of the time just using the H.264, and then for regular 30 frames per second shots, then use 8K. There you will get the best quality possible. And for all of the other B-roll shots, then I'm using 4K at 120 or 60 frames. If you don't have the time to dial in all the settings, and if you don't have an ND filter with you all the time, then what I would recommend is just use the regular video mode and master other things like composition, things like, movements that you're doing with your smartphone. Like all these things, they will make the biggest difference in the end. In case you have not seen the video where I'm showing you step by step how we made an epic video in this boring park right here, and click this video over there.